How many of you have been in a virtual meeting? How many of you have been in a virtual meeting while wearing your pajamas? How many of you have been in a virtual meeting and shopped on Amazon? And how many of you have been in a virtual meeting and thought, this could have been an email? While we can laugh about these shared experiences, it really is quite a travesty that a place that has such potential for connection and collaboration is oftentimes underutilized and, quite frankly, implemented in such a way that it has the exact opposite effect of this potential, causing apathy and disengagement as opposed to effectiveness and efficiency. I have been living and breathing and working in the virtual space for over 14 years, so I know the tremendous power it has to drastically change cultures for the better, to drive organizations to extraordinary success. And I know the drastic power it has to change the lives of everyone that enters that space for the better. But I did not enter the virtual space on purpose. It was a total accident. You see, I'd been a middle school social studies teacher who had just had my first baby, and I wanted to stay home with him. And a few years later, the recession hit, and my husband and I decided I needed to return to the classroom. And by that time, that newborn baby was 2 years old, and we'd added a baby girl to our family. So I was devastated at the thought of leaving those babies in the care of anyone besides myself. And so I immediately looked for virtual work, and up popped a high school social studies position. I don't think I've ever applied for anything faster than I did for that role. But I'll tell you all the honest truth, I did no research on that job. I thought I'd be sitting at home, grading papers and answering emails all by myself, people leaving me alone, and I was hopeful that I'd make a decent salary. And so when I went in for my interview, with real educators asking me real questions like, how are you going to make social studies engaging in the virtual space? And how are you going to build relationships with people you never see? I felt like I had failed. So when the assistant principal called me to offer me the job, I felt like all my dreams had come true because I was going to get to stay home with my babies and make a salary. But y'all, the dream went way beyond that, way beyond anything I ever thought possible in education, because I could actually teach. I could tailor my instruction to where each child was, as opposed to teaching where the masses were. And I could build relationships with each child individually, truly getting to know them, without all the noise and distraction that comes from the typical classroom. It was a magical place. Oh, and the relationships I built with my colleagues, they were so much deeper and so much stronger than anything I'd had in the brick and mortar world, because we could have intentional conversations when the need arose, as opposed to trying to sneak it in on recess duty or in the car rider line. And so what started as a Band-Aid to fix our financial woes became a love and a passion and something in which I believed in entirely. And when you love something that much, and you are that passionate about something, you tend to find your way into leadership. And so I went from being a high school teacher to an assistant principal, to a principal, and then to the executive director. And although my roles changed, one thing never wavered, and that was my complete and total belief in the need to intentionally build relationships in the virtual space if you wanted to be successful. And I was fortunate that the people that worked alongside of me believed in the same. We knew culture was key to success. We knew we had to have a strong culture if we wanted our school to shine. But doing that virtually is a completely different beast. So we looked to people like Peter Drucker, who talked about culture eating strategy for breakfast, and Brené Brown, love her, who talked about connection is why we are here. It brings purpose and meaning to our lives. Okay, so we knew those things were key, but how are we doing them virtually? We were flying through the virtual universe at warp speed, building our plane while in flight, without a playbook, without stuff to call back upon, figuring out how to build a virtual culture built on connection when we didn't see the people that we were serving and working with every day. So we set about to create norms and expectations and policies and procedures, all centered around relationships in the virtual space. And we had trials and setbacks and errors along the way, but we landed in a place that is positive, productive, and collaborative. One of the early norms that we instituted caused quite an uproar. But I know that this was the spark that led us to the great organization at the school today. So in our early days as a school, whenever we met in 2 virtual platforms. We had an instant messaging system where we could share texts and websites and documents, and then we would call into a conference line from our phones. And eventually, that instant messaging platform came with the capability of meeting virtually, where we could turn on those webcams and share our screens and meet live in the moment together. And so the executive director at the time made the decision that whenever we were meeting, we would meet in the instant messaging platform with our webcams on. Now imagine that. We had gone from phone lines to face-to-face meetings. And this caused quite an uproar because so many of our staff members were meeting while wearing their pajamas. So many staff members were meeting from their cars. So many staff members were meeting from their beds. So many staff members were meeting in the grocery store without makeup on, with their hair undone. So many staff members were shopping on Amazon. And so a small virtual mutiny unfolded with emails and texts and phone calls begging us to change the decision, claiming that it would destroy the culture. And sure, with any organizational change of that magnitude, there's that potential. But with great risk comes great rewards, and in this case, the rewards were huge because our meetings suddenly became more productive. We could see and feel and hear the passions and the sentiments behind the words of our colleagues. We got to know each other on a deeper level, learning about each other's likes and dislikes, strengths and weaknesses, families. We laughed together, we cried together, we faced conflict together, and we celebrated together. We humanized the work. We were no longer just names and emails and text messages, but real people with real emotions and real passions. But we couldn't put these same expectations on our students. And so we set out to model what we wanted to see. So whenever we met with them, our webcams were on. We provided opportunities for collaboration and connection because we knew Maslow's hierarchy of needs, you need to feel connected. You need to feel like you belong. You need to feel safe. And so we had to create those opportunities in the virtual space for our students if we wanted them to succeed. And so allowing them to work together, both with our staff and with each other, was key. And that meant working together, sure, on curriculum and instruction, but also on that social side. So we had virtual proms and virtual clubs and virtual meet and greets and virtual social hours, all to build those relationships. Now, I could tell hundreds of stories of how this approach with the focus on relationship changed the lives of so many, but in the interest of time, because I cannot go over 18 minutes, I will pick just one, and it was a recent story. I was on a Christmas tree farm looking for the perfect Christmas tree, and I hear someone calling out my name, and I think, who knows me here? That cannot be me. They cannot know who I am. But I turn around and I see a young man running towards me. And he told me he'd been a student at the school when I was high school principal. And that he had come to the school like so many of our high school students considering dropping out. He did not see the need for a high school diploma when he was going to work on a Christmas tree farm. And he said when he got to the school, he did the bare minimum, barely logged on, barely did any assignments. And then he said he started getting phone calls and texts and emails begging him to get back to work. Our staff was all in. His math teacher, his English teacher, science teacher, everybody pouring into him. And then he said he got a phone call from me, the high school principal, talking to him about the importance of a high school education, even if he worked on the Christmas tree farm, and what a shame it would be if he quit when he was so close. Now, I don't remember this story at all, but I know it happened just as he described it because that is what we instilled in our staff, the importance of relationships, even if you don't see the child, even if they never log on, even if they disappear. And we changed his trajectory because he not only decided he wanted to graduate, but that he was going to go on and get his own business and start with a food truck. That is the power of a virtual relationship. Education at this moment is at a critical place. We know there are huge learning losses following the pandemic. Harvard estimates the average student is a half a year behind in math and a third of the year behind in reading. Couple that statistic with McKinsey research finding that states 1/3 of our educators are considering leaving the classroom. We are heading towards a crisis of epic proportion if we do not think outside of the educational box. And I know virtual options are that outside of the box thinking when implemented properly. But that's the key. It isn't just about turning on the Zoom. It isn't just about telling a kid to go do those assignments. It is about connecting with them on a deeper level and addressing that hierarchy of needs. There are so many exciting things happening virtually right now. AI is going to allow our educators to take tasks off their plate that take them away from teaching and building relationships. Focusing on those tools in the virtual space is key to success. But again, it has to be done properly. Forbes estimates there are 36 million remote workers and 23% talk about being isolated and lonely. And so creating those spaces to build connections, to build relationships is key. Simon Sinek recently talked about building trust virtually is so hard because you don't see each other, you don't pass each other in the parking lot, you don't bump into each other in the hallway. So creating those spaces where you can bump into each other, have those quick conversations is key to success. The virtual space is a powerful space that can maximize relationships, connections, collaboration, effectiveness, and efficiency. So, I ask each of you, the next time you enter the virtual space, whether it be for one meeting or if it is your daily way of working, that you are present, that you engage in the moment with those in which you are working and seek ways to connect and collaborate. Be authentic and transparent and sparkly and your you self in all the ways so people can learn who you are and what makes you tick. Take risks. Use tools that you haven't tried before to maximize your time within the space. There are an infinite world of possibilities there if we grab hold of it. Optimize it for the success of your organization because the virtual world is not going anywhere. It is not disappearing. It's only getting stronger and faster. So embrace the future, take those risks, and enjoy the virtual ride. Thank you.